I believe that every heart is kind.
2008.
Just a little under you.
Yes. With stories for you.
Lost in these uneducated blues. I just want to love you all I can.
Hi, Michael Mobbs is my name, and 2008 is the name of this show, and it's great to have you here. Today we're talking to a local Chippendale person, and enough of me already. Let's introduce you to her. Can you tell us your name and where you are in Chippendale? Not the street address. But
So my name's Alana, and we live in Shepherd Street, Chippendale.
right. And the little I know about you is you're a mother of one child.
Yes.
And you have just the one husband.
Yes, just one husband. One is
Right.
enough. And one daughter, so she's almost 4.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've noticed, so how long have you been here?
About almost 18 months now.
Yeah?
Yeah, we moved here at the beginning of lockdown last year, so 2020,
Yeah.
and we've been here ever since.
Right. Not that nothing flows from this. It's propelled by curiosity. There's no right or wrong answer, but why Chippendale?
So at the time, we'd been living in an apartment over in Surrey Hills, and we wanted a terrace house because we wanted a backyard, a bit more space. And we basically picked Chippendale because it was close. It's not too much further from Surrey Hills. And at the time, the rent was really good. So that's why we came.
So it was just a rent.
Yes.
But then you actually bought in Chippendale.
Yes. We like it here so much that a few weeks ago, we actually bought a terrace here. So we will be moving into that soon.
Right. And are your building plans going according to plan, or is the virus knocking you around?
The virus is destroying it.
Oh.
Well, not destroying it. It's just taking a lot longer. It's much more stressful. A lot of our tradespeople live in the 12 LGAs, so they've had issues with coming. We've had to rebook certain trades 3 or 4 times. It's definitely been stressful, but it's getting there.
Yeah. And how is it for the trades? Do they talk to you about what it's like for them? There are people who were going to come, then couldn't come, and
Yes.
then came back. Have you been able to get the impact of the virus on their work?
So one of our tiler actually, a couple of days before he was due to start at our house, he was at another job, and I'm not sure what happened, but he got stopped by the police and was issued a $5,000 fine. And he turned around and said, I can't afford to keep working, so I'm not going to come and risk it. So we had to, for him, I can't imagine what that was like for him. It would have been a huge amount of money. And he then lost future work because he didn't want to come to his other work after that.
Oh, gosh.
So
Why did the cops...
I'm not sure. I'm assuming he broke some sort of COVID rule, or I don't know exactly what happened, but yeah, it's a big fine, and he's just trying to earn money. So
Gosh.
it was very upsetting for them. And
So when did you start the renovation?
we were supposed to start it in the beginning of the current lockdown, but we got delayed by 2 weeks because there was a rule that no trades at all could work. And then, so I don't even know, actually. I've lost track of time. 12 weeks or something?
It's
I don't
like
know.
that for me
I'm not
too.
Sure. Maybe, I don't know how long, maybe
There's
10
COVID
weeks.
time, which is no time at all. It's like being suspended in space.
So-
Is that how it is for you?
It is.
And also, how long was the renovation expected to take?
We were hoping that we had access before settlement. So we were hoping that we would get the whole renovation finished before settlement and then move in.
Yeah.
And that hasn't happened.
Oh.
So we're a couple of weeks past settlement date now. And it will be a few more weeks until we can actually move in,
Right.
hopefully, barring anything else happening.
Right. I see you in the street, and I see your husband, your partner, and it's interesting to see a young family coming into Chippendale in the virus. It really interests me how, as a mother and how, as a father, you deal with a virus with a young child.
Yeah. I guess it's hard because all of her extracurricular activities have ended at the moment. So normally she has swimming and ballet lessons, and that hasn't been happening. It's hard for her to play with other kids because the playgrounds are sometimes shut. There's not many other kids out. I worry a bit about taking her to parks in case she does catch something. So it's definitely, it's not great for families, I don't think. And we're lucky because we don't have to homeschool. I don't know how people are doing that. And I've only got one kid. Multiple kids would be terrible, but yeah.
Well, if it's any consolation, my girlfriend is a librarian and a teacher in a girls' school of 850 girls, and the primary language of 73% of them is Arabic.
Oh, wow.
And many of their parents don't speak or write English.
Yeah.
And they often, there's 30% come from refugee camps, and they don't get any help from their parents during the virus. So I'm just trying to buoy you up and say, you know, it could
always
be
worse. It could always be worse.
Yeah.
It could.
Yeah. What do you like about Chippendale despite the virus and so on?
Chippendale is such a friendly place. I've lived in a lot of places, and this is one of the very first ones where I actually feel like I'm part of the community. So from the very first moment that we moved here, our neighbours introduced themselves. They invited us. At that time, we were allowed to go places. They invited us out. We've made friends with a lot of people that live around here. We get involved in the community gardens and that sort of thing. So it's been really good. I enjoy living here.
What don't you like?
That's hard to answer. I would say the things that I don't like about Chippendale are the same things that happen everywhere. So things like there's never enough parking, housing affordability is not very good. It's the same thing everywhere. I can't think of anything really about Chippendale that's not good. Nothing springs to mind anyway for me.
There's a council election, I think it's in early December this year. Is there something you'd like to ask that would be new or different from the candidates in the election? Would you like something different in Chippendale, or don't we have enough time to answer that?
This is going to sound really bad, but I don't know anything about the election. I can't actually vote in Australia. I'm not an Australian citizen, so I don't pay too much attention because I can't influence it, I suppose.
Okay. How long have you been in Australia?
I came here when I was 16.
Right.
So I'm going through the process now of getting citizenship.
Yep.
But it's taking longer because of COVID. So
yeah. Okay. Cool.
yeah.
And where do you get your food and your shopping from? What do you do? Do you go? Tell us where you go.
So for a big weekly shop, I actually go to Zetland. The Coles over there. But for small, just need to fill up on things we've run out on, I go either Broadway or Central Park. There's so many places in walking distance here.
So the miser in me, his ears pricked up. Why Zetland?
Purely because it's easier for parking. It's easier for parking. So,
Yeah.
And they have a playground there, which we can't use at the moment, but normally we would stop, play at the playground, look at the pet shop, do the shopping, come home.
Right.
So.
Do you ever go to the farmers markets at Carriage Works?
No.
Have you heard of the farmers markets?
I have heard of them, and I would like to go to them, but I'm not even sure if they're happening at the moment.
Right. Well, I have no personal financial interest in Carriage Works. Only I can say that it is amazing how different and how wonderful the food is.
Okay.
And how going there, it's a kind of church for me every Sunday morning from when it opens at 8 o'clock till it closes at 1 o'clock. And I just ask about food because we are lucky enough to eat 3 times a day.
Yes.
And if we put good food in, hopefully we get good bodily results out. The oranges at the moment are so good you think this can't be real. Sometimes I have to go to Harris Farm or Broadway or Central Park,
Yeah.
but I buy reluctantly with my arm up behind my back. So I want to give you as your takeaway from our conversation, go to Carriageworks
Okay.
on Saturday morning.
Are they still open?
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's all isolated and safe. It's actually safer because they have this huge old train shed factory roof, and there's lots of ventilation, and
Yeah.
it'll be safer for you to go there and to buy than it would be to go to the thing. But break a leg, get there and get some oranges. It's down towards maybe halfway in the shed,
Yeah.
and you will say to that Michael bloke, I should listen to him more. He's given me a good steer. So thank you for talking to us about
That's okay.
why you're here, what keeps you here. And do get back to me about the oranges
I will.
if you ever chance your arm
Thank
in
you.
Carriageworks. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thanks,
having
Alana.
me.
Good. Cheers.
I believe that every heart is
2008 Stories from Chippendale, Sydney, Australia and Earth. Here we have tonight Ehssan Sakhaee. I think I got that right. And Ehssan can count. He's got mathematical skills that I can only dream of. He studies all sorts of things, but now he studies and teaches self-growth, self-understanding,
Self-leadership.
self-leadership.
I'll label it on. Yeah.
What is meant by the words self-leadership?
Self-leadership is quite a broad term. Now, if you search it, there'll be a lot of out there. But it really essentially entails how do I manage myself in terms of my thoughts and emotions, my stress, my time, my life. So it's very much around how do I, take control of my life. How do I develop the skill sets that help me be the best version of myself?
Ehssan, I can't imagine a better, riper time for self-leadership during the virus here and across Earth, because a lot of us spend a lot of time alone, even if we're in a confined space with other people. It's forcing us to deal with who are we, what are we doing. Is self-leadership a valuable tool in a virus environment?
Absolutely. I think it is a critical time for us to actually use this opportunity to develop ourselves because, as you mentioned, the extreme kinds of experiences we've had over the last 2 odd years, 1.5, 2 years, because of the pandemic has forced us to really learn how do I lead myself through this difficult situation. And as you mentioned, many of us, including myself, and we live alone, or we have there were times where I had to self-isolate, which meant I couldn't even go out. And the tools that had helped me to be able to manage in these kind of circumstances, which when I didn't have those tools, I would have really kind of had a really tough time. I couldn't even imagine if I didn't have the tools which you may be familiar with. Of course, you're familiar with. One is mindfulness, for instance. Mindfulness has been a very practical and important tool in being able to self-regulate, what we say.
So what is mindfulness?
Mindfulness, the definition of it, the formal definition of it, is the paying of attention to the present moment intentionally without judgment. So observing our current experience, whatever it is, internal experience, without labeling it as good or bad. For instance, if I'm feeling lonely, instead of saying, why am I feeling lonely? What's wrong with me? I shouldn't be feeling lonely. I should, I need to do something about it. It's just like, this is how I experience what I'm experiencing right now. I'm a human being. Let me create some space and allow myself to feel lonely. There's nothing wrong with that. So as soon as one takes that kind of approach, it reduces the suffering of whatever that's been experienced, which may be unpleasant. Of course, loneliness is not never a pleasant experience, but it reduces the suffering, the extra suffering that we put, that's layered above, on that feeling or emotion. And this is quite really helpful. And that's kind of the essence of
If
of
there
the-
were an Olympic Games in judgment, I would be a finalist. And look at me, I'm as old as the hills. I'm 71 and I still start the day off with early judgments, rolling in. I don't know where they come from. Is judgment something that, in your experience, we all do?
Oh yes, yes. It's almost impossible to avoid judgment because, as you mentioned, as soon as we open our eyes in the morning, it rolls in.
I don't ask it. Why does it? Why does it turn up?
I think what has really happened is essentially the reason we survived as a species, as Homo sapiens survived, is they had to constantly judge their environment for survival purposes. So they had to scan for threats, and so this is kind of was one of the ways that we survived. But what's happened today is that it's become so much that it's become, in a way, dysfunctional. It's almost taking us the opposite direction. It's almost creating self-destruction if we don't do something about it.
So what are the practical things that one does to be mindful as anybody each day, if we wanted to choose that?
I think it's a really important question, and I'd like to just kind of relate it back to judgment, because judgment is what essentially we all experience. A judgment of ourselves, of other people, of the environment, of our governments, of the world, whatever. There's countless things we can judge on, like no matter who we are, where we are, what we're doing. It's like it was endless.
While you've been talking, my voice has been saying judgment about this and judgment about that. It's true.
And it's there, and the good news is the approach of mindfulness is not to get rid of judgment. In fact, it's to embrace it as a human condition. It's a relief.
I'm not sure this is a load off my mind. Why would I embrace judgment if it's such a bad thing?
And it's not really holding on to judgment. So when I say embracing it, is to observe your judgment non-judgmentally.
That's a load off my mind. Can you spell out how I do that?
So it's very much so the practice of mindfulness, which you're familiar with, Michael, since you joined some of our sessions, is noticing every time that there's a judgment. If you notice that judgment without adding extra judgment to it, what happens? It starts to quieten down. So for instance, let's say I catch myself blaming myself, calling myself names. I'm so stupid. Why did I do that? That's just ridiculous. And then I notice myself.
Gee, your judgment and mine should get together. I've got that judge.
That's happening to us, like all of us. And I think, and that's why I made that kind of comment, because we're constantly judging ourselves, and at that self-judgment, then it's extended into our environment.
So what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you notice the judgment, you don't resist it, and you try to just observe it.
Exactly.
Okay.
There is no resistance to that thought that's arising, but when we notice and observe the thought itself and create space around that thought, it loses its energy. It becomes quieter just by observing it. So we don't have to. It's very different to positive thinking, for instance, where we focus our attention on some other positive thought, or it's not about that. Mindfulness is not about changing how we're thinking, but to notice that, oh, here's some thought. I'm judging myself. That's it, done. And that just breaks the cycle of judgment. The mind becomes quieter. And as we practice this, it just becomes quieter and quieter.
given that your training is engineering and you're used to observing facts, so-called, something that you've quoted, some research, I find really interesting, and I'm not accurate in what I'm about to say, but you say that if you practice mindfulness or meditation, I think for 9 minutes or something a day, in 6 to 8 weeks you grow a particular part of the brain. Can you correct me and say more accurately what it is that research shows?
Absolutely. So this was research that's been done, and it's one of the professors of neuroscience, which I cannot even recall his name right now, mentioned, and I quoted in the book, where just 10 minutes of mindfulness practice, so just observing our thoughts and emotions for 10 minutes a day for 8 weeks, it enhances the part of the brain which is associated with positive emotions, and it just makes the parts of the brain which generate negative emotions, it like actually has the brain structure begins to change. So the amygdala, for instance, which is the part of the brain which is associated with fight or flight response, the gray matter begins to get smaller, and the parts of the brain, including the hippocampus, which is around concentration, memory, actually expand, and regions that the prefrontal cortex that's to do with positive emotions. Yeah, so it's very interesting.
Now, let's be fair dinkum. Are you saying this is actually has been physically measured?
It's been physically measured, yeah.
Well, how? You can hear the doubting.
Yeah. Well, so the MRI is the main method of measuring the brain, and that's just the magnetic resonance. That's they put people in this kind of device, and it just scans their brain. And so the structural differences of the brain can be measured. And generally what they've done is they looked at people who meditated for some period of time and people who haven't, and then just compared.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And not just one or two people, but, it has to be statistically significant for them to make such a claim.
All right. Now that I've heard of the research, I'm going to say that's very encouraging.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been more than 3 decades of research around mindfulness, which started in the 70s by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, who was himself, he was a medical doctor, but he kind of introduced these programs.
Right, just to wind up, if you can just be confident we're going to publish as part of this some of your publications so people can read more about you and find out about the things you're doing. Okay. I have to say it's wonderful to talk to you, and I keep thinking as I listen to you, I've got to get this guy back. It's been wonderful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
Thank
Fantastic. Welcome. Here we are at 2008, the village of Chippendale, and our guest is Stefan from Cafe Guilia. So just tell us about yourself and your cafe, just briefly, Steph, so people know a bit about you and the cafe.
We're just an urban cafe, just sitting on a street corner in Chippendale. Started in 2003, just as with no intention of anything other than to be a neighbourhood diner and to be the centre of a neighbourhood. And we've done that quite successfully. On a relationship basis, but it's evolved over the years into a business that is very, I wouldn't say environmentally aware, but in as much as it has developed into a business that has developed closed loops and has focused on closing more and more loops as it goes along, which has brought us together. And all of that works for us as a neighbourhood because the closed loops keep us in our neighbourhood and keep all our inputs and outputs in our neighbourhood. It's not a perfect thing, but it's a work in progress. And
well, respect, Steph. It's great to hear you speak like that. I know when I walk in, I see a blackboard with all these things. I think to myself, how do I choose something, and where does all this food come from? How does he manage all this? And one day I put that to you, and you said, well, if you look at them, they're pretty much the same ingredients in many of the dishes. Have I correctly understood you?
Yeah. So, if we have avocado in the building, we find purposes for it other than the one dish. Because quite often an ingredient, let me relate the chicken story to you.
Sure.
It's in the old days, restaurants would buy a chicken, use the breast fillet, and throw the rest away. And as time went on and other ethnicities arrived and other ways of doing things arrived, there was a use for everything in the chicken. And so that's what we are. We find a use for everything, so even the skins of the avocado get used for things. And
Do they?
yeah. So even in as much as, it gets used for compost. That sort of thing. But,
Right.
we use avocado skins as cups for stuff sometimes. And
Oh, I've seen that because you've got a catering business as well, don't you? How would you use an avocado thing in catering? I might like to impress some guests if I'm ever able to have them back to my house. How would...
You can make a guacamole and put it back into the into the case, or a salsa or something. It's the outer leaves of a cabbage become a plate. It's all that sort of thing.
Steph, I'm glad we're talking because we've known each other for a long time, and it's tough for all of us. I'm alone in my house, and sometimes it's tough. But I go into your wonderful cafe, which had people from movies and entertainment, university, press, media, having all this hubbub, and now there's just a few people outside and just a few people inside. I want to just ask you, firstly I want to tell you it's great that you're still there, so thanks for persisting in what must be really, really difficult circumstances. I don't want you to bleed over the floor here because there's so much whiskey down there we could drink ourselves into a stupor. But how is it for you?
Pretty tough.
Yeah.
Pretty tough. I don't know what outcomes are going to happen, and the economy is about to reopen, and that's when it'll get tough, because all this stuff that's on hold, like rents and utilities and stuff, which are all forgiving at the moment, all will have to get repaid in a future time, doubled over on top of current payments. So real-time payments plus past payments will start to go out together, so our cost of doing business will double at a time when we don't know if our income will double. So I think that's when everyone will go to their knees, including us. So at the moment, tax office is forgiving, landlord's forgiving, utilities are forgiving, and so we can bumble along. But
I have a greater understanding of what it's like for people in the entertainment industry. We have some amazing businesses here, but a neighbour was supplying entertainment for 3 cruise ship lines across the world and had 25 employees and supporting all sorts of people. He's driving Uber now, and he's got 3 kids.
I understand that.
And now he's, I think this week, doing a course on holding a stop and go sign.
And I've got paperwork to apply for a bus driver's job, because I suspect that's
Steph.
That's somewhere where we're all going to end
Mind
up.
you, I'd catch your bus any day.
Thanks.
Hey, I was surprised you spoke about your circularity in your business and how things are used, but I wanted to show people what you can do if you're a customer of a cafe, and if you're a cafe owner, or if you just care about your kids, yourself and Earth. Steph gives me, in a milk crate full of newspapers, and he gives me either another milk crate. He used to give me a lot of potato sacks, but now with business he only gives me a few because not a lot of potatoes. So what we do in Chippendale as part of this circularity that Steph was talking about was we put those in our public composting bins. And what happens is the paper makes the compost break down because it's a slow-burning fire compost. And worms, precious little dears, they don't like light, although they do like to have sex in broad daylight. This hessian sack goes on top of the compost. So that's one of the things that a circular cafe looks like. So thank you
You're welcome.
on behalf of myself, the compost, the worms, and the compost that we give to our trees. So I guess I'm brought to silence. You know, it must be like Christopher Columbus or somebody heading out into the distance. They had hope in their hearts. Do you have hope in your heart?
No, there's always hope. We can open tomorrow, and then we can see what the day brings, and it just keeps going like that.
Yeah.
I've got no idea what tomorrow will bring and
Yeah.
what next week will bring, and every email makes my heart sort of shudder because they're quite aggressive and quite legalistic at the moment, and
What lawyers and
lawyers and accountants and creditors, and it's just, and it's all through no fault of our own. We're not doing anything wrong. It's just our income's been shut.
Yeah, I used to be a lawyer. They're just doing their job, and aggression and fraud.
I know they're doing their job, but
Yeah,
it doesn't make small business
no.
an easy task. It doesn't
No.
make any business
And
an
if there's
easy
no small businesses, there'll be a lot less lawyers. I can tell you. They don't understand, I think, yet what the true dynamics are of the virus. If there's no small business, there's no lawyers. You know. Anyway, one of the things I noticed alongside this long menu of so many things to choose from is there's a consistent lineup of faces. People have been with you and working in that cafe for a long time, and that's part of your business model. I don't know whether you attend it or it's just a natural glue that you create. It's wonderful to walk in and see the same faces. They say long black or whatever the thing. I don't know whether I'm getting old, but more and more I ask, how do they remember? When you employ somebody, is it just gut instinct about how you think they'll work? Because I don't know how those people in your cafe remember what people want to eat or drink.
It's relationships. It's always what the cafe's been about. So part of the loops we create are the relationships. So it's not just the composting and the repurposing of things. It's also the relationships. So if you have a partner at home, you remember how they drink their coffee or their tea or what they like for breakfast or which side of the bed they want to sleep on, and it's no different. You walk through the door, they know your face because it comes through the door every day.
Okay.
You've developed a good relationship with them because you're a nice man, you're a lovely customer, and so they are eager to interact.
Oh, it's a two-way street.
Yeah. So they remember it's a long black. They remember that you like your toast in a particular way, and they remember which table you prefer to sit at, and you know that you don't like the music too loud. And
now I know why he came. Tell us about how you choose who and where from you buy your food. What is it that makes you choose a particular potato or a particular whatever that you're offering people?
There's different factors. The potatoes have to produce a good chip. It's as simple as that. So that doesn't necessarily mean we go local, but you definitely don't go overseas for it.
Okay.
So, and it's a seasonal thing. So Queensland will produce potatoes at a different time to New South Wales
Oh, okay.
and a different time to Victoria. So at
Right.
any given time in the year, we might be buying from any one of those states,
Right.
depending on where the potato crop is cropping at the time.
Okay.
Potatoes that have had too much storage convert their starches into sugars and can't be chipped because the chips will go black.
How do you know if it's an old potato?
Because when you cook it, it goes black. So stored potatoes that have converted their starches to sugar are great for roasting, but not good for chipping. So
Listen, I have to ask you to come back again because I've got the cooking bug. And I wonder, we have to come to an end now, but would you come back and talk to this so that at least I can cook myself some better food at home?
Sure. Yeah. So
Thank you. Thank you, Steph.
No problem.
2008, the naked village in the city of Sydney, with 4,037 stories, and this has been one of them.
Lost in these uneducated blues.